you know of anyone who's just completely disappeared with absolutely no leads? I live by myself in an old, ex-government house in the suburbs of Canberra, Australia's sleepy capital city. I go to uni during the afternoon and I work 4 or 5 hours at a local shop most nights to pay rent. So, I spend most of my downtime zoned out on the couch until weird hours, watching trash TV and just doing uni work. I've always been a poor sleeper. I like the small hours of the night, especially in a glorified country town like Canberra. It's quiet and incredibly peaceful. Until a few weeks ago, I even enjoyed the odd late night walk over into the reserve, with nothing but owls and possums and the ghostly quiet local mob of kangaroos for company. That's all changed when the strange things started happening. Towards the start of winter, I was up late, just sitting there in the dark having helped my neighbour's daughter sneak back into her house. We had not long started a bit of a relationship after her 18th birthday. Nothing too serious or long-term, but being 25 myself and given we were just having some fun, we thought her parents might be a bit uncomfortable. So we kept it a secret. It was a typical Canberra winter's night. Icy cold and clear. Our breath crystallizing in the still air as we whispered our goodbyes. I briefly contemplated going for a walk, but the chill seeping through my clothes quickly dissuaded me, and I decided to just watch a movie under the warm pile of blankets on my couch. It would have been about another hour later that I heard a large engine just off in the distance. That's not ridiculously unusual. I'm not close to the main road, but I am close enough that on still nights I can sometimes hear the trucks bringing supermarket deliveries down from Sydney. Canberra is a big enough town that people are driving around all the time. What was kind of weird though was the whirring, swishing sound that accompanied the rumbling engine. Looking out the window, I saw the orange flashing lights come around the corner, and I realised that it was a street sweeper. That did strike me as a bit odd. We do have street sweepers going around like any city, but because of penalty rates and so on, they don't run outside of normal business hours, except right in the centre of town where all the public service offices are. Councils love to cut costs all over the world, and it's no different here. Still, I figured they were just making up for lost time or something. The truck quickly turned around the cul-de-sac and trundled off into the night, and I didn't give it a second thought. A couple of weeks went by, quite normally. I had a whole bunch of essays to do, and I was running pretty late on, well, all of them. Brittany had had a fight with her parents, and she'd come over for a drink or two and to blow off some steam. She decided to crash there rather than head home, so she was asleep in my bed while I plugged away stubbornly at an essay about media law that was slowly defeating me. I was just thinking about going to bed myself when I heard it again. The street sweeper. This time, I definitely thought it was odd. This is a suburban cul-de-sac. That first street sweeper was the first one I'd seen in about a year, and the second one in my 3 years in this house. Why would there be two in just over a fortnight? I cracked the blinds, just enough to look out, more curious than anything. and I saw it come to a stop in front of Brittany's house. There is one sole feeble streetlight in the cul-de-sac, which I think must be about 30 years old, so dull is the light it provides. It makes it tough to see much that goes on at night, but I could still see the silhouette of a man get out and make his way around the truck. He moved strangely, almost drunkenly, and I briefly considered calling the cops. I can only imagine the damage a drunk driver in a big truck like that could do. But I decided to just watch for a moment. The whole thing seemed slightly off to me. He walked into the center of my neighbor's front yard, and he just stood there, still. I couldn't be sure exactly what he was doing, but he looked to me like he was staring at the house. It was weird. I felt like I sat there watching him for about 5 minutes before he hopped back in the street sweeper and started it up, heading off into the night. But when I looked at my watch, almost 90 minutes had passed by. I figured I must have dozed off, late as it was. But there was something bugging me, and in my foggy mental state, I couldn't quite grasp what it was. I was tired though. Maybe it would come to me in the morning. When I woke, Brittany was in my shower. I rushed in to tell her about what happened the night before. I was worried that she might think I was crazy, but she was surprisingly calm. She dried off and got dressed, telling me that she'd be back later and that she had something to show me. As she left, I remembered the feeling I had the night before, that I was missing something, and it hit me like a bolt of lightning. It was still freezing cold in Canberra, below zero at night. When I went for my rare winter walks late at night, my breath billowed around me like smoke from a cigarette. I didn't see that from the figure in the truck. It was like they weren't breathing at all. While I waited for Brittany to come back, I decided to call the local council. I thought that maybe if I complained about the noise of the truck so late at night in a quiet suburban street, I might get it stopped. Or at the very least, get some answers. Everything about this was starting to feel very strange. And it only got stranger when I called the local council number. They told me in no uncertain terms that there were no street sweepers working at that time, and that they had not operated suburban street sweepers late at night for many years. They also said that none had been out of the depot, which left my head spinning a bit. I knew what I'd seen, but they were telling me that I couldn't have seen it. Was there some muppet with a privately owned truck just running around Canberra and standing in front of yards like a weirdo? It didn't make sense. Then Brittany came back over and showed me the letters. There were 6 of them in total. They were all just an image stuck to an A4 piece of white paper, very crudely, as though a child had pasted it on there during preschool class. They looked like they were cut out of a newspaper, but they certainly weren't from any local papers. They were far too violent. They showed robed figures, clearly dead, with faces frozen in agony and all sorts of horrific injuries. One of them showed the robed body crumpled in a pool of blood, head mounted on a spike sticking out of its chest, Another body was curled up like a spider, smashed horrifically. They looked grainy enough to have been computer generated and then touched up to cover it, which Brittany explained was what her dad thought of them. But I wasn't so sure. They almost looked like stills from a bad security camera. Although, maybe that was the point. I decided that I needed to tell her parents about the figure on the lawn, and she agreed. She'd already covered for her whereabouts by saying she'd gone to a friend's, and her parents were much more trusting than mine were at the same age. So we chatted on the lawn for a bit, made a big show of just being neighbourly, and she took me over to chat to her old man. I told him the basics of what I'd seen, and he called the police pretty much straight away. They came in the evening, chatted to everyone, but there wasn't a whole lot they could do. And the neighbours have security shutters on all their windows, so they weren't overly fussed about someone being weird out the front when they were all locked up safely inside. Brittany and I agreed that she probably shouldn't be sneaking around at night anymore, but beyond that, it seemed like there wasn't much else to be done. Of course, I was invested in the mystery now. I couldn't work out what the whole street sweeper thing was about, or where the crazy letters fit in, if they were even connected. I started staying awake looking for it, sacrificing sleep and school for weeks before anything happened. The weather warmed up, and Brittany started crashing at my place more, as much to take advantage of my air conditioning as anything else. I've never been under any illusions. We get along great, but our relationship was one of convenience more than anything else. So if she wants to use me for my aircon, that's fine with me. It turned out to be a great decision regardless of her motives. For about a week, I saw the truck every night. It was strange. It just drove in and out of the street, like it had the first time. I called the police the second night, and the third, but it was long gone before they got there. And the fourth night, they didn't even bother showing up. Then, after 6 nights, the truck stopped again. The figure got out, walking oddly, and stared at the house. I woke Brittany up, and we briefly debated confronting whoever it was. But the feeling that something was wrong was too much. It was like the air was charged, ready to blow, and there was a foul feeling hanging over the street, like a stagnancy or a sense of decay. We were both seized by a gut-wrenching sense of dread. Brittany was so affected that she turned away from the figure and sat below the window with her back to the wall. I think she retched a bit, but me, I was transfixed. The figure never even looked at me, but I felt like I was being watched from all angles, like millions of eyes were boring right into the core of my being. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The figure got back into the truck and pulled away. Brittany insisted that I run straight over and tell her dad. I wasn't really that keen on going out in the dark, if I'm honest, but I did it. She hid at my place, still conscious of her parents' reactions to her being with me. I woke her father up and he called the police. This time, they came out almost as soon as we hung up the phone. They took statements, but the truck and its creepy driver were long gone. Searching the lawn, though, they did find something strange. Precisely where the figure had stood, there was about a meter of totally dead grass. The next day was mayhem. I could hear Brittany's parents having it out half the afternoon. It seemed like her mum wanted to get out of town for a while, but her dad thought that was an overreaction. Brittany came around during the commotion, clearly shaken by the whole situation. Despite our shallow relationship, she just wanted some comfort. She went back home before sunset, and this time, the police had a car out the front of the house. But nothing happened. In fact, nothing happened for the whole week, or the next two. After the first few nights, the cops just couldn't justify keeping the car there. But they did keep patrolling the suburb as often as they could. It looked as though everything might have finally blown over. We couldn't have been more wrong, unfortunately. It happened just last month. It was a hot night. Storms crackling to the east and promising to crash through and cool everything off, but never delivering. I was tossing and turning underneath the aircon, window cracked open and Brittany sleeping beside me, when I felt it again. That awful, creeping dread, twisting its way deep into my gut. I was already sweating, but now it became a clammy sweat. My heart beat so hard, it felt like it was trying to burst through my ribs. Something was terribly wrong. The air was foul again. But this time, it felt like the temperature was rising steadily, and there was a sickly odor that seemed to cling to my nose and throat, heavy and cloying. Trembling, I opened the curtain just enough, and I peered out into the night, already knowing what I would see. I couldn't understand how the truck had arrived without me hearing it. Maybe I'd been close enough to sleep that I just hadn't noticed. The figure was standing on the lawn, same as the other nights. But something was different. It was like it was vibrating. Its outline somehow hazy and indistinct. It looked like a heat haze, but it was just isolated to the figure. From my room, with the light behind it a bit more, I could see that the figure was entirely black and seemed to lack a form. I couldn't really comprehend what I was seeing. In an instant, it shifted or something, moving close to the house for the first time. It covered 20 meters without ever looking like it moved. After it did, there was a sound. Low at first and steadily building. It was like a hum, but deep and low. It grew in intensity more and more until I thought my head was going to burst and my vision started to swim. Black dots danced in front of my eyes, and then, with a blinding flash like lightning, it just stopped. I sunk to my knees below the windowsill, and I fought a wave of nausea and vertigo to drag myself upright. Outside, the figure had turned and was facing the truck again, walking in its strange way. For a split second, it stopped, and it turned its head looking straight at me, Its eyes. Man, those eyes. I can't quite work out how I hadn't seen them before, but I will never stop remembering them. Smouldering in its coal black head like plasma. Cold, deep purple. They radiated malice and something else I couldn't place. Something ancient and powerful. I felt like an ant under a magnifying glass, at the mercy of a being that was utterly pitiless and far beyond my understanding. Then it climbed into the truck and it vanished. I don't mean that it drove off. It literally seemed to wink out of existence. I don't know where I found the courage to move, but somehow I did. I screamed at Brittany to get up and follow me, not caring who saw her come out of my house. I had the most terrible feeling about the fate of my neighbours. I pounded on their door while shrieking something panicked and probably completely unintelligible to the 000 operator. But there was no response. The cops arrived within a few minutes and pulled me away from the house. They must have busted the door down, but it didn't take them long to see that the house was totally empty. Everything was locked from the inside. There was no sign of any entry during the night, forced or otherwise. Nothing was taken, but they were gone. The beds had clearly been slept in, but there was no sign that anyone had left. The cops reported the strong smell of ozone in the house, like the ionized air after a lightning strike, and a stale and oppressive feel inside, despite the ducted aircon. But that was it. Brittany was obviously distraught, and I had been pounding on the shutter at the front window so hard that I had broken some bones in my hands. So we were taken to hospital. The cops came and took my statement, but I didn't really tell them everything. How could I? They would think I was out of my mind. Shit, maybe I am. They've been looking for the truck ever since, without any luck. The leading theory is that both my neighbours saw the truck that night and shot through, having become increasingly panicked by the continued harassment. Realistically, even the officers who attended have told me that that's the police equivalent of shrugging and saying, "Well, fucked if I know." Brittany lives with me now, for the moment. She won't even go in that house, and I can't say I blame her. There's a feeling in a place, even when no one's there, that tells you it's someone's home. That feeling is completely gone. Some relatives came by and brought all her stuff over, but since then, it's been pretty much abandoned. Empty and hollow. I did some research on the internet, but I couldn't find anything about anything like this. Plenty about people vanishing without a trace or cause, but nothing that fits this specifically. Maybe putting this out here will help someone. If that's what brings you here. If you're seeing the street sweeper or getting the letters, then my advice is to run. Just run and don't look back. Leaving it all behind, that's got to be better than whatever this terrible being has in store for you.